I'm Marita de Wet, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the third lecture of the 2020 Mantis Weekend. This morning, Denise presents on nature as a dynamic extension of our psyche in terms of Jung's archetype of the self. Denise is a clinical psychologist and Jungian analyst working in private practice in Vredehuk, Cape Town. Denise has a keen interest in archetypal patterns, mythology, shamanism, the Enneagram, and dream work. Besides her curiosity about the human psyche, she has a deep love and a profound sense of reverence for nature, and specifically the white lions. She leads annual dream appreciation retreats to the Global White Lion Protection Trust in the Tumbavati. Her paper, The White Lion as Symbol of the Archetype of the Self and the Cannibalization of the Self in Canned Hunting, has been published in the 2020 spring issue of the Jung journal Culture and Psyche. Denise, we look forward very much to your presentation, and it is now over to you.
Thank you, Marita. Our topic, as Marita said, is nature as an extension of the archetype of the self, as embodied in the image of the white lion. I want to start off with an extract from Ian McCallum's poem, Wilderness. Have we forgotten that wilderness is not a place, but a pattern of the soul, where every tree, every bird and beast is a soul maker? I would like to start with a personal dream from July 2013, long before I even knew of the existence of the white lions. This is the dream. I was standing naked outside the Cape Town Stadium. I was completely invisible to the leaving concert goers. Out of nowhere, a white lioness walked up and embraced me, standing on her hind legs. She gazed directly into my eyes with immense love and acceptance. I have never felt such deep belonging. She nudged me on her back, and I rubbed my arms around her as I lay down, and she touched my arm with her paw to reassure me. I believe this is what Jung would have referred to as a big dream. In retrospect, I recognize that this is a numinous encounter with this magnificent creature in dreamtime. It left me awestruck and inspired. Humans are destroying the beauty of nature and decimating its majestic animals, such as the white lions, for unconscious and egotistical reasons. A lack of reverence for the natural world, as well as an absence of a meaningful connection to nature, is at the root of this devastation all around us. I propose that the lion, and the white lion in particular, is a symbol of the Jungian concept of the self. And furthermore, that our interconnectedness with nature is an integral part of the archetype of the self. Jung saw our relationship with nature and all non-human others as essential to the development of consciousness and wholeness. He linked the loss of our mystical identity and the despiritualization of nature with the atrophy of our polygenetic roots or survival instincts, which has fallen back into the unconscious psyche. Jung stated that in the civilization process, we have increasingly divided our consciousness from the deeper instinctive strata of the human psyche. Jung believed that the malaise of the modern society to be a consequence of alienation from the 2 million year old human being in all of us, our archaic nature. According to transpersonal psychotherapist Zana Marovich and Madziva Matsinga, writing on African cosmology and shamanic tradition, African and other indigenous belief systems see the human psyche as whole and non-dualistic, both containing and being embedded in relationships with others, whether it is people, ancestors, descendants, society, animals, nature, the cosmos, as well as the transpersonal and spiritual realms. This fundamental interconnectedness between ourselves and others broadens the idea of what it means to be a human being, in contrast to the Western individualistic view. This holistic view is captured in the South African concept of Ubuntu, meaning a person is only a person through others, giving priority to the interdependence of relationships as an embodiment of our humanity. It is precisely this interconnected relationship with nature that many of us have lost. In the early 1970s, James Lovelock proposed the Gaia hypothesis. He argued that the Earth is a dynamic, self-regulating system where all life is interrelated, interacting through complex feedback loops. Life on Earth is a network of inseparable patterns of relationships. The exploitation of natural systems has destabilized the fundamental biochemistry of our planet. The Earth is a living system whose well-being depends on the health of the wetlands, forests, flowers, bees, rivers, mountains, sea, moon, and sun. The sum total of our biology is connected to nature, to the air we breathe, to the water we drink, and the food we eat. Indeed, we are nature. We are the microcosmic expressions of a complex web of life. Perceiving ourselves as separate from nature, carelessly damaging our planet, our home, or our original mother, for ourselves and our future generations. The survival of our species is dependent on maintaining a healthy relationship with nature, which is our mother, or womb, as the original meaning of the word matrix, from which the word matter is derived, actually means. Ian McCallum, an inspirational ecologist and Jungian analyst who has a profound love and passion for nature and the wilderness, refers to the brain-environment link in his book, Ecological Intelligence, and sees our environment as a dynamic extension of a psyche. In agreement with philosophers Pierre Tyler de Todden and Karl Popper, he feels that the human psyche exists not only within, but also out there. If we were receptive to and aware of this connection, it could engender a deep sense of belonging in our species. He explains that human beings exist in what he calls a mind field of intelligence, information, and influence, not confined to the human sphere, and which we could potentially access. Similarly, Jung stated, nature is an incomparable guide if you know how to follow her. Meredith Sabini believes we have placed an artificial boundary between ourselves and other life forms, the non-human world, and thus denying the interconnectedness that was always an important aspect among the so-called primitive people, providing them with a deep sense of belonging. This estrangement from an emotional participation in nature has resulted in a fatal dissociation from the more instinctual aspects of our psyche. In Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, Jung described a visit to the United States, where he met with the Native Americans of New Mexico. Through his conversation with Oguaya Biano, he realized that our poverty lies in our over-reliance on reason and rational consciousness. We are unable to recognize our impoverishment, but Jung understood that Oguaya Biano's sense of himself as the son of the sun was cosmologically meaningful, giving him a proper place in the great process of being. Jung stated, our ancient contact with nature has gone, and with it has gone a profound mental energy that this symbolic action supplied. Thunder is no longer the voice of an angry god. No river contains a spirit. No snake the embodiment of wisdom. No mountain cave the home of a great demon. No voices now speak to man from stones, plants, and animals. Nor does he speak to them thinking they can hear. His contact with nature is gone, and with it has gone the profound emotional energy that this symbolic connection supplied. Since most modern people no longer believe in the old gods of nature, how can we re-establish such a connection? Western societies' overvaluing of the development of a left brain rational consciousness, the result of the industrial and cultural revolution in the age of reason and enlightenment, has led to a devaluing and disconnection from the right brain's irrational, intuitive aspects of a psyche. These include aspects such as receptivity, resonance, and interconnectedness. A fundamental erroneous assumption of human beings is that consciousness and intelligence only lie within human beings, not also in animals, plants, microbes, and the elements. But we are wrong. Earth has a soul. There is an organizing intelligence within nature, and nature is conscious. During May 2018, I was privileged to walk the Mfuluzi Wilderness Trail with Ian McCallum. The Mfuluzi Trail was pioneered by Dr. Ian Player and Makubu Mtuela, who have recognized the fundamental necessity for people to connect with the natural world. And they founded the Wilderness Leadership School in 1957. They understood the profoundly transformative power of a journey into the wilderness and sleeping under the stars, and that it could be a deep experience of our connection to nature and a journey into ourselves. We hiked through an area abundant with wild animals, following the natural animal paths while Ian guided us to see nature in all its aspects as a reflection of the archetype of the self. More specifically, he offered us an opportunity to be in resonance with the surroundings. I had a luminous experience one night when I stood guard alone, listening to the faint sounds of a lion roaring in the distance. My task was to maintain the campfire to keep the wild animals at a distance and be on the lookout for any approaching predators. After patrolling the path leading into our campsite, a path regularly used by animals, the scene that awaited me as I walked back to the fire evoked an archetypal energy. I experienced a felt sense of connection to all the ancestors, stretching back to the beginning of humanity, to all those who have walked a similar path towards that unique scene for millennia before me. From the utter darkness of a shadow night, our small fire appeared with the silhouette of a seemingly ancient tree behind it, and above it, the glittering Milky Way. This engendered within me a sense of awe and belonging, a sense of being embedded in the world around me and not separate from it. In a moment of expanded consciousness, I understood that I was not alone. We are not alone. We are the memory of those who will come after us, and we are the dream of those who came before us. We are life itself, and nature is our sacred vessel. Jung's archetype of the self denotes a regulating center of the psyche. It's an archetype of wholeness, a transpersonal power that transcends the ego. He states, the self is not only the center, but also the whole circumference, which embraces both conscious and unconscious. It is the center of its totality, just as the ego is the center of consciousness. The archetype of the self refers to psychic totality, namely the integration of opposites, insofar as it holds the tension between the opposing forces rather than their merging into an undifferentiated form. To integrate the opposites, we must bring into consciousness the darker side of our nature, or the previously denied shadow aspects that reside in the unconscious. According to Edward Edinger, the archetype of the self can be described as follows: wholeness, totality, the union of the opposite, the central generative point, the central source of life energy, and the fountain of our being. Experiences of the self possesses a numinous characteristic of a religious revelation. Hence, Jung believed that there was no essential difference between self as an experiential, psychological reality and the traditional concept of a supreme deity. For Jung, the psychological construct of a self expresses an unknowable essence, which we cannot grasp as such, since by definition it transcends our power of comprehension. It might equally be called the God within us. The beginnings of our whole psychic life seems to be inextricably rooted in this point, and all our highest and ultimate purposes seems to be striving towards it. According to Ian McCallum, the self is the organizing survival force of nature within each individual. I understand McCallum's definition to mean that the archetype of the self within each human being is a manifestation of the interconnected and interdependent universal life energy that flows within and between all living creatures. This idea is sketched in more detail by Marie-Louise from France, and from France used the metaphor of a nuclear atom, with its minuscule nucleus at the center as an analogy of the self's centrality in the psyche. She states, the self is often symbolized as an animal, representing our instinctive nature and its connectedness with one's surroundings. This relation of the self to all the surrounding nature and even the cosmos probably comes from the fact that this nuclear atom of our psyche is somehow woven into the whole, both outer and inner. All the higher manifestations of life are somehow tuned into the surrounding space-time continuum. Animals, for example, have their own special food and their particular home building materials, and their definite territories, to all of which their instinctive patterns are exactly tuned and adapted. Time rhythms also play their part. We have only to think of the fact that most grass-eating animals have their young at precisely the time of year when the grass is richest and most abundant. I propose that the lion, as an ordering principle in the natural order of life on Earth, together with its association with the sun, its deep-rootedness as a motive of both the collective conscious and unconscious, makes it an appropriate symbol of a self. I will clarify my proposition that white lions are an even more pertinent symbol of a self by elaborating on the phenomenon of a white lion itself, the significance of white animals in spiritual traditions, and the white in color symbolism. Throughout the ages, lions have held a special place as significant symbols for humans, from the earliest cave paintings to the gods of ancient Egypt, and more recently as representing both religious and state power. From the dawn of civilization, there has been a special relationship between humans and lions. The earliest recorded depictions of lions date back to 40,000 years and are found in Paleolithic cave paintings and ivory carved figurines from ancient cultures. The most famous of these is the zoomorphic, or animal-shaped, Mensch, translated as lion, human, lion-headed ivory figure of a Hollenstein-Stadel, Germany. And as you can see on the screen, there are actually several others, of which I've just given examples of. Most of the world's great patriarchal religions have revered the lion and equated their spiritual founders to the lion. In Hinduism, Narasimha, the incarnation of Vishnu, is worshipped as lion god. The Bhagavad Gita describes Krishna as a lion among wild creatures, and Christ is referred to as the Lion of Judah. The Buddha is the Lion of Ashakias. Lion's roar signifies the echoing of Buddha's teaching to the four corners of the world, thus representing enlightenment, according to Campbell. The great goddess is associated with lions or other big cats in many early cultures. The Anatolian goddess Sibyl is depicted having a chariot drawn by lions, or shown sitting on a throne, flanked by lions. And the Hindu deity Durga, who's frequently depicted riding a lion or tiger. The lion as depicted on the inner city gate of Babylon was a symbol of the Mesopotamian goddess Ishtar, who was later identified with the Sumerian goddess Inanna. She was also depicted standing on the back of two lions. Freya from Germanic lore also rides a chariot pulled by two cats. Many ancient cultures consider the lion to be an embodiment of the god image in its association as a sacred solar animal symbol. For example, the Egyptian goddess Sekhmet, who is represented as a woman with the head of a lioness, is often depicted with a sun disk on her head, as was the sun god Ra. The lion's sun motif has been a powerful mythological symbol in Iran since Mesopotamian times, and was depicted in the state flag until 1980. The most famous and mysterious lion relic is the Great Sphinx, a remnant of ancient Egypt. The Sphinx form was an important ancient Egyptian symbol associated with the lion-headed solar goddess Sekhmet, one of the oldest and most powerful deities in ancient Egypt. She was the goddess of war and destruction, but she was also the goddess of healing. And this is an example of how the opposites are contained in a specific archetypal image. Sekhmet was a symbol of both destruction and renewal, but ultimately in the service of restoring rightful order. Within mythologies and cultural narratives around the world, lions are often portrayed as guardians and protectors of the good. Numerous ancient cities and temples contain an abundance of lion sculptures, often gate guardians, such as the Lion Gate of ancient Messenia in modern-day Greece, the Lion of Babylon from Mesopotamian culture, which is modern-day Iraq, and the city gates from the Hittite Empire, now modern-day Turkey. In China, in the Forbidden City in Beijing, two lion statues guard almost every doorway, as the Chinese believed that lions protected humans from evil spirits. Snow lions, featured on the Tibetan flag, are mythical creatures important in the Tibetan culture, as they are regarded as protector entities in Buddhism. Similarly, in African mythology, the protective role of lions are depicted in the myth told by Credo Mutwa, a well-known South African shaman. The Earth Mother asked the exiled lion, Imbudebengile, to send down great carnivores to the earth, lions, leopards, and wild cats, to protect the humankind from negative entities. Man was too scared to live with the lions, so he chose the wild cats to tame and live with him in his houses. The word for lion, used by the first indigenous people of South Africa, the sun, is tsau. Tsau not only refers to the physical form of a lion, but also embodies the essence of a lion, the archetypal energy or spirit of the lion. According to Mutwa, tsau translates as star beast. He believed tsau to be a sacred word, and according to the great knowledge, invoking it is seen as calling on an elemental force. According to Linda Tucker, founder and CEO of the Global White Lion Trust, whose work has delivered lion-hearted leadership to humanity, lions as apex predators are viewed as true guardians of land and ecological balance. Like the self in the human psyche, lions could be equated to an ordering principle in nature. The theory of trophic cascades argued that apex or alpha predators, and these are animals at the top of the food chain, such as lions, are critical to healthy ecosystems and to the maintenance of biodiversity. Ecosystems are believed to in part be ruled from the top of the food chain, the highest trophic level, as the presence of predators affect the behavior of prey, who seek safer pastures when a predator is present. This in turn affects plant life, as plants' growth patterns are directly affected by the grazing behavior of herbivores. Even the flow of rivers may be affected, which was clearly demonstrated by the reintroduction of wolves into the Yellowstone National Park in the United States. Before they were reintroduced, overpopulation of deer and elk, due to the lack of natural predators, has led to overgrazing and defoliation, which caused erosion, reshaping the landscape. Once the wolves were reintroduced, the herbivores avoided the areas where they could be easily hunted, and the vegetation in that area regenerated. The thriving plant life stabilized riverbanks and stemmed erosion, which changed the course of streams and rivers. Symbolically speaking, an apex predator such as the lion can be seen as having metaphorically ingested and metabolized all of creation, including the sun. Alchemy aptly mirrors this metaphor in its image of a green lion. In the natural food chain, apex predators consume herbivores, their natural prey, and in doing so, they indirectly consume the herbivore's food source, namely plants, which absorb the sunlight via the process of photosynthesis. As the center of our solar system, the sun is the source of all life. According to Linda Tucker, at a mythic level, the sun and the lion are interchangeable symbols. So we'll come to the white lions in African mythology. The first reported sighting of white lions by a European dates back to 1938, but it was only in 1975 that Chris McBride, an animal biologist, officially verified their existence through photographic evidence in his book, The White Lions of the Timbavati. White lions, like other sacred white animals around the world, are not albino animals. The white lion is a color variant of the tawny African lion, their color being the result of a recessive gene, a rare phenotype. White lion mythology has been part of oral African tradition for centuries. White lions have great spiritual significance for the indigenous people of the Timbavati. which is located in the northeast region of South Africa, adjacent to the Kruger National Park, and is the only place in the world where white lions naturally live. Timbavati was identified as a sacred site by the early African kings. And the name in Shangaan, the language of the local people, it means river of stars, as well as the place where the star lions came down from the heavens. In a local legend of the Shangaan people, a special white lion cub was born when a shining star fell to the earth during the reign of Queen Numbi, the Rain Queen, over 400 years ago. The Shangaan people believe that white lions are star beings that came down from the heavens to herald a new era for humanity and the earth. An important aspect of white lion mythology is the belief held by African lion shamans that white lions were the first animals to be created, and that they will be the last to roar at the end of time. The lands of the Timbavati lie on the Nile meridian, the longitudinal meridian 31 degrees east of the Greenwich meridian. It is also referred to as Zep Tepi, translated as the beginning of time. According to the great knowledge assessed by Sangomas or African shamans, there is a direct association between this longitudinal meridian and the emergence of life on the planet. If one follows the Nile meridian north, it runs straight through the ruins of the Great Zimbabwe, the massive megalithic site associated with lion lore, and then leads directly to the Great Sphinx of ancient Egypt. Is this only coincidence, or could it be greatly significant in terms of a spiritual value and meaning of the white lions? African elders regard white lions as the most sacred animal in Africa. Credo Mutwa taught that the white lions of the Timbavati symbolize the eternal essence of African wisdom and have an important and crucial message for humanity. According to prophecies, their presence calls for an awakening of consciousness and for true ethical leadership. It is also believed that the message of the white lions constitutes a warning against humanity's unrestricted, excessive consumption of nature, which desecrates natural law. White lions are believed to be the direct messengers of the divine and symbolic of the consciousness of the original source or creator. They are ancestral bringers of light that would lead us into an inner connection with our higher self. From primitive societies to the great Greek thinkers, Plato and Aristotle, to Christian tradition and mythologies around the world, the color white has been associated with light, brightness, goodness in a non-moralistic sense, innocence, purity, as in the Virgin Bride wearing white, divinity, illumination, open-heartedness, harmony, beauty, peace, joy, happiness, and health. According to Salot, light is traditionally equated with spirit. Its whiteness alludes to just such a synthesis of all, the significance of emanation from the center, for light is also the creative force and cosmic energy. Dominique Zahan, who wrote on color symbolism in Africa, equates white with a mystical union with God that takes place during initiation rituals and many West African customs, where initiates are painted with white clay and a white goat is slaughtered. This union with God is not a separation from community, but a sense of a deeper integration, presence, and connectedness. There is no union with God, a Bambara would say, without the world we live in. In alchemy's great work, or magnum opus, a process symbolic of spiritual evolution, turning lead into gold, white, or the albedo phase, denotes, and I quote, an indication of the success of the first part of the magnus opus, which has been achieved after a purification process of subjective and inner evils, which we may call private, according to Salah. The albedo phase is interpreted as the initiation of a dialogue between conscious and unconscious elements in order to bring clarity through the integration of opposites and thereby recover the original purity or wholeness and receptiveness of the soul to ultimately receive the divine spirit. The great work can be equated to Jung's individuation process, psychological development through inquiry and self-reflection, and where the proper relationship to the archetype of the self is the goal, where the ego in relationship to the self is analogous to the earth revolving around the sun, according to Jung. Color symbolism support my hypothesis that the color white is a significant aspect of the archetype of the self. Edinger described white as a color of primal wholeness, which is a principal characteristic of the archetype of the self. Whiteness is described as symbolizing the impersonal, infinite, eternal, undefined vastness that lies behind the personal, particular, concrete, and ordinary phenomena of everyday life. It is the original, undifferentiated whole before it has been refracted, dismembered, as it were, into its particular component parts. It is the infinite and impersonal that has never been subjected to the personalizing process. That is the process which incarnates the eternal forms in a personal, particular manifestation. White animals hold an important meaning in the mythology of many cultures. They are often considered sacred, and it's forbidden to hunt them. Example of sacred white animals are the white dog of Uruguay, the Commodi spirit bear, a white variant of the North American black bear, found in British Columbia's Great Bear Rainforests. There's also the white elephant from Southeast Asian cultures, and the well-known white buffalo from the myths of the First Nations of America. The birth of a white animal is considered to be an omen in many cultures around the world, a message from the Great Spirit, and a forewarning of powerful but necessary change. They are believed to be the messengers of hope, peace, and harmony among all people, and a restoration of balance within the natural world. Arthurian, Hungarian, and Sumerian legends refer to white animals, frequently a stag, which often led the individuals to battle or new lands and had magical properties. These white animals directed people to a potential challenge that could assist them on their journey of individuation. Edinger, in his analysis of Melville's Moby Dick as an expression of a transpersonal spirit world in the archetypal psyche, understands the white whale as the archetype of the self or a god image. The significance of Moby Dick, according to Edinger, is that he represents the collective, eternal, immortal soul or essence of the whale as a species. Its sacredness is represented by its whiteness, and to hunt it is sacrilegious. And as you can see from the pictures on the PowerPoint, we have our own white whale here, right in South Africa as well. There was a time when the hunt was considered sacred and was conducted in a deeply respectful and religious manner. This perspective is reflected in the myths, legends, rituals, and traditions of various people around the world. For example, the seal hunt of the Inuit, the buffalo hunt of the Blackfoot Native Americans, and more locally, the hunts of the first people of South Africa, the Khoi and the San. Joseph Campbell said that these myths made it clear that for these hunters, the hunt involved the aspect of a deity being sacrificed as the animal. Ian McCallum states that hunting then was also a symbolic act, imbued with meaning. Rituals were performed by shamans before the hunt to identify the animal to be killed. These rituals involved dressing in the hides of animals with specific headdresses and entering a dreaming state, while also experiencing a visionary journey where the shaman would intentionally enter into identification with the animal. It was the responsibility of the hunter to hunt and kill that specific animal in an honorable and respectful manner and to show appropriate gratitude. It was believed that there was a soul exchange between the hunter and the hunted. An example of this reverent attitude towards the spirit of the animal is reflected in Campbell's description of a buffalo hunt of a Blackfoot native, or how we now refer to as First Nations Americans, where the animal rights are properly celebrated by the people. There is a magical, wonderful accord between beast and those who have to hunt them. The buffalo dance, properly performed, ensures that the creatures slaughtered shall be giving only their bodies, not their essence and not their lives, so that they will live again, or rather live on, and will be there to return the following season. The hunt itself, therefore, is a rite of sacrifice, sacred and not a rawly secular affair. The hunt in its traditional form, on the ground, fair chase hunting, where you match your wits with those of the animal through knowledge, instinct, skill, and stealth, involves a close relationship with animal and nature. American environmentalist and wildlife conservationist Randall Eaton said that the hunter has to be extremely alert and present, immersed in the environment with acute perception of aliveness of all he perceives, knowing when and where to move, exercising patience, and being conscious of the importance of silence and the art of stillness. For Eaton, this increased awareness, consciousness, and presence is a powerful rite of passage. He sees it as a transformative experience, strongly bonding humans to nature, develop wisdom and heart intelligence, as opposed to ego intelligence. He emphasized, we very much need the wisdom and humility seen in traditional hunting societies of the proper relationship to the non-human other. Eaton in no way condones the hunting of lions or what we call trophy hunting. In contrast to my previous description of a hunter, picture this: lions bred in captivity, cubs taken from their mothers as early as a few days old, often hand-reared and used in the cub-petting tourist industry to habituate them to people. These tame lions are released into fenced-in, confined areas from which there are no escape and where they are easily tracked down, guaranteeing the hunter a kill. These hunters, so-called hunters, pay up to $50,000 per hunt for a slaughtered lion. There is no hunting involved here. Today, both white and tawny lions are bred commercially in the can hunting industry in South Africa. The documentary Blood Lions, Bred for the Bullet, gives a full account of this trade, which are considered despicable and shameful to many South Africans. This travesty of a hunt, where lions are killed for trophies in organized, fenced-in enclosures, offering them no escape, illustrates spiritual poverty, the absence of self-reflection, blunted feelings, detachment from and a lack of respect for nature in humans who are removed from any meaningful relationship with nature. To genuinely embody the powerful energy represented by lions requires deep self-awareness, mindfulness, empathy, and a recognition of a spirit in all living things. Lion energy are not for sale. Real greatness requires stewardship, not domination, and most definitely not slaughter. This sad character of the sacredness and meaning of a hunt, as practiced by our ancestors, is a misguided attempt to bolster unconscious feelings of inferiority. The lion is the ultimate power animal, a beautiful, majestic creature whose name, nature, and image we have used for millennia as symbols of strength, divinity, royalty, dignity, wisdom, and courage, justice, authority, and grace. Yet we find ourselves in the 21st century in the so-called civilized world, where lions are being gunned down for the sake of ego satisfaction, for the sake of a trophy on a wall. Do these so-called hunters somehow believe that through this indiscriminate slaughter they can claim the lion's power for themselves? The Khoisan people, for instance, never hunted lions because they understood the human-lion interaction as a fundamental aspect of shamanism, and they revered the lion as the great hunter. In the pre-colonial times of African Zulu kings, wanton and indiscriminate hunting was not permitted, and transgressors would be severely punished if they killed a protected animal. Modern humans are asleep, egotistical, disconnected from their own natural instinct as well as from nature and all non-human others. Or are we possibly simply infected by wetiko, a cannibalistic spirit? Wetiko is a concept that author Paul Levi borrowed from the wisdom of the First Nations of North America. Wetiko, or indigo, refers to a state of cannibalistic, insatiable greed and selfish excessive consumption with no regard for others, which leads to a decimation of natural resources and life systems on Earth. According to Paul Levi, wetiko is a negative manifestation of an archetype that is part of a human psyche, a demonic force or pathogenic virus that convinces its host that it's logical and righteous to devour the resources necessary for life, including the cannibalization of the life force of others, human and non-human. He states that wetiko disturbs the individual's ability to see themselves as an integral, interdependent, and interconnected part of the environment, so important to our ancestors and the tribal communities. It is this false separation from self, of self from nature, and in my opinion, from the archetypal self, that makes this cannibalism rather than simple, indiscriminate slaughter. The clan hunting of lions depicts a cannibalization of self, where the ego has been usurped by the negative, devouring archetypal energy of wetiko. This self-separation from the archetypal self, as implied by the concept of wetiko, mirrors the primordial drama of the accursed hunter. In one version of the myth, of the infernal hunt, humans are doomed to an endless chase when their attention is easily distracted from their God, and they fall prey to possession by the archetype of the accursed hunter. This myth demonstrates how humans perpetually chase transitionary worldly objects with an insatiable urge, a blind outward activity, instead of contemplative activity, such as Jung's individuation process, never realizing that that which is hunted, namely the self or the center, is within. And this is clearly a case of a symbol for a limiting situation, that is, of falling away from the center towards the endless turning periphery of the wheel of phenomenon, unending because self-delusion is perpetual incitement to the sterile urge of the pursuit of worldly things. Jung elaborated on this idea. The man whose interests are all outside is never satisfied with what is necessary, but is perpetually hankering after something more and better, which, true to his bias, he always seeks outside himself. The externalization of life turns to incurable suffering, because no one can understand why he should suffer from himself. No one wonders at this insatiability, but regards it as his lawful right, never thinking that the one-sidedness of his psychic diet leads into the gravest disturbances in equilibrium. This is the sickness of Western man, and he will not rest until he has infected the whole world with his greedy restlessness. It would be easy to project these negative archetypes on the can hunting industry and other perceived atrocious figures in our world, but much more difficult to look at our own role as consumers and the manner in which, directly or indirectly, we contribute to the destruction of our ecosystem. According to an article of Watts in 2018, humanity is devouring the planet's resources at a rate faster than nature's capacity to regenerate. And this consumption is now beyond a sustainable level. Known for his work in saving the white rhino, Ian Player wrote how the indigenous Zulu game gods told him how to live with the greatest respect in the animal and natural world. One of the many lessons Ian Player learned from Magubu, his lifelong Zulu friend and colleague, is that if you live well with the animal world, you live well within yourself. He understood why animals are seen as brothers, and described his own experience of animals as follows. Their presence activated archetypal forces within the psyche, and at times I felt I was moving in another dimension. Player is insistent that indigenous knowledge is crucial to our modern society, and we are at risk of losing the spiritual wisdom engendered by a profound connection to land and animals. My mentor, Graham Simon, who shared his unique dream appreciation method with me and who introduced me to the White Lions, helped birth the ideas for this paper in our initial dialogues. He wrote that honoring our world and nature is an essential, respectful attitude that we humans need to cultivate. Further, in his realization through an instructional dream of a shamanic truth, that the two worlds are actually one. He states that in any way to damage this temporal world we live in is to deface the template of the eternal. He writes that the first people had protocols and covenants incarnating the value of respectful interactions with nature, which in turn constitutes an honoring of the inner realms of spirit. A pivotal question is how to nurture an ethical, responsible, and mindful relationship with nature. In his foreword to Newman's Depth Psychology and the New Ethics, James Yandel referred to the ecological perspective of a recognition of the wholeness of the earth and its vulnerable interdependence of parts and processes as an apt model for the integrated whole human psyche. This ecological consciousness may also be a necessary condition for the continued existence of the natural world. A beautiful numinous dream and subsequently 2 visits to the Timbavati, heartlands of the White Lions, led me down this path of exploration. Through my journey, I became aware of the real plight of the White Lions, as well as lions in general. And this is my lion's roar in defense of their right to walk this earth, not to be turned into trophies or to be bred as domestic animals. In my exploration of the significance and symbolism of the white lion, I equated it with Jung's concept of the self. I also believe that hunting animals in the wild was once a sacred ritualistic act of reverence towards the animal in the context of a respectful relationship with nature. Since we have disconnected from nature, hunting no longer carries this numinosity. In exploring the symbolism of a white lion, I arrived at the significant conclusion that can hunting of these magnificent creatures is nothing less than a desecration and cannibalization of self. Wilderness, interwoven with humankind's ancient lived experiences and evolutionary leaps as an archetypal pattern of a soul constitutes the bedrock of our consciousness. Nature is sacred and invaluable to the overall well-being of human beings. When we destroy nature and the non-human other, we in essence destroy ourselves. Linda Tucker's teacher, Maria Cosa, said, "If you kill a white lion, you kill the world." The white lion, as symbol of self, calls us to consciousness of an ecological balance and the imperative of a proper relationship with self as embodied in the natural world and the non-human other. And I want to thank you for listening. And to finish off, I just want to quote Black Elk, where he says, "Peace will come to the hearts of men when they realize their oneness with the universe. It is everywhere." Thank you.